always used to lay you clean up the messes. Down on my knees, thought I couldn't stand up on my own. Turns out sometimes you're stronger alone.
Hey, Mike Shimwell here, host of the Shunned podcast. If you want to tell your story, buy a t-shirt, maybe some merch, maybe get some additional resources, you can do so at shunnedpodcast.com. If you want professional help to heal and recover from life in a cult so that you can figure out who you are and what you want out of this life, or maybe you just want to figure out where the patterns from the past might still be showing up in your life today, you can find help at exjwhelp.com. Again, that's exjwhelp.com. And every episode of the Shun podcast has helpful links in the podcast and YouTube descriptions. So if you need something, you can always look there. And now let's meet our guest.
Hi, my name is Jacob Baxley. I'm 35. I was one of Jehovah's Witnesses. I'm now shunned.
All right, Jacob. So how'd you come to be one of Jehovah's Witnesses in the first place?
Well, I was kind of born into it. I was about a year old when my mom got a knock on the door. And once that knock on the door came, she was hooked. So I was raised in it after that.
Was she somebody who, just the way you said, once that knock on the door came, they talked, she was hooked. Was she a person who made fast progress, as they would say, toward baptism?
Yeah, for the most part. Within about a year, she was baptized.
Okay.
And so, I guess that's kind of fast for 90s ish. But yeah, it was decently fast.
And was it just you and her at the time, or were there other people involved?
No, I've got 3 other sisters. I'm the oldest of 4. So when she got the knock on the door and she started studying and got baptized, it was just me. And then my sister was born. And then 3 years later, my other sister was born. And then 6 years after that, my other sister was born. So initially, I was the only one in.
Gotcha. And was your father in the picture? Was he a witness, or did he take to it? Or
my dad was in the picture. He was in the picture. He was not a witness. Until about 1994, 4 years later, something like that. But he was never opposed. He never tried to keep mom from going or taking us or anything like that.
Okay. So growing up in it, basically being born in it, being the only thing you ever knew, what did it mean to you growing up? What was the worldview it gave you? How to make you see things?
Well, I don't really remember much from that era, from being 2.
Right.
When, I know that I was, loved by the congregation and all that fun stuff. There were, there's plenty of pictures and old friends and all that, babysitting or whatever the case may be. When I was 5, I got cancer.
Oh.
And so that was a big deal in the congregation. Of course, hospital liaison committee got involved automatically, and oh my God, no blood, that kind of stuff. So that kind of, how am I wanting to say it? Didn't make me stand out. It I can't think of the word.
To bring a lot of attention to you, I would think, in the
there's that. Yeah, essentially standing out, but still.
How did you feel? Good Lord, be 5 years old. That's a pretty big deal. Remove the witness stuff. It's still a pretty big deal, right? How did you know what you were going through? Did you know that people were saying, "Hey, let's not give this kid blood if he needs it"? Did you have any understanding? Or was that probably
as far as the
you?
Blood aspect? No.
Yeah.
I actually didn't learn about that until I was a lot older.
Okay.
As far as understanding that I had cancer, yeah, that I understood. And even though I was 5, I do have vivid memories of being in hospitals and, tests and, all that fun stuff. But I don't know. Actually, I even have a memory of being at the Jeffersonville High School for the circuit assembly when I had cancer.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I've been there. They had a red devil. It was the Jeffersonville Red Devils. They had a red devil behind the speaker. It was hilarious.
Yep. And that's actually where both of my parents were baptized.
Oh, wow.
In that high school.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Baptized under the devil. So you were obviously, well, we were in the same general area, though we didn't really know each other back then. So how did it go with your cancer and treatments and such? Did you end up facing did you end up facing a need for blood or something like that?
I had a biopsy, had a brain biopsy. As far as needing it or getting it, no, I didn't get it. I do know that there was talks of potentially needing it, but I didn't have to have it.
Okay, well, good. I'm glad I never got anywhere near, or hope it didn't get near that, as far because it can be scary, especially with the witnesses denying that option.
Yeah.
So where do you go from a 5-year-old kid who, I guess, so you obviously survived the cancer.
No, I'm dead.
Just inside, right? So
Well, yeah, there you go.
how did that make you? Did a lot of people rally around your family in the congregation back then?
A lot of people did rally around them. There were families in their congregation who I actually was close with as a kid, who they'd pick me up at the house and take me out in the ministry all day. Or, there was an older couple in our hall whose the wife was a witness, the husband wasn't, who they kind of took me under their wing as a grandkid. And they lived 3 miles from where we did. So there was that. I mean, it was a fairly normal childhood for a witness.
Mm-hmm. So what's that mean? Did you have friends? Did you have people around? I mean, other than going out in the service and to meetings, did you have friends to hang out with at all?
At points, yes. Our congregation, there were specifically 2 families who were, populated the congregation, and those were the ones who were the elder body, and those kids were the ones that got privileges, that kind of stuff. And if you were in one of those families, you were in the group. You hung out, had friends, did stuff. As far as me and my siblings, there were 1 or 2 that we would hang out with, but nowhere near what everybody else was.
Yeah, knowing where you came from, I can think of at least one of the families that dominated. It's tough. It's tough when you grow up in a congregation that is dominated by a big family, isn't it? Because a lot of times, that becomes the in crowd, the clique, and you can't get, if you're out, you're nobody.
And you can try all you want to get into that clique, but because I did. I tried for years. Even when I was a teenager, tried to get into that clique or that group of friends, and never happened.
Understood. So how did so you say you had kind of a normal JW childhood. Did you go to school, or were you homeschooled? What was that for you?
I was actually homeschooled. I do know that I went to public school for kindergarten. But after that, from 1st grade on up, completely homeschooled.
Wow. I'm assuming then some of that, your sisters were probably homeschooled, so you all kind of had your own.
Yeah, all of us were.
Your own little class, so to speak.
Yeah.
So how did that go for you? Did you enjoy being homeschooled, or did you ever feel like maybe?
No, I actually hated it. I wanted to go to school, but that was not in the cards at all.
And why'd you
No
want to
matter
go
how
to
many
school?
times it was be around people and, just be normal.
It's very isolating to be homeschooled, isn't it?
And be yes.
Or can be, yes. Um, so that was your entire school career. Ultimately, do you feel like, I don't know, how'd you end your school career? Did you graduate? Did you go to a GED program? What did you do?
Well, when we were in school, we actually weren't going through an accredited program.
Okay.
And so it required me to just go and get my GED.
And that's what a lot of people
So
do.
when I turned 17, that was the first thing I did is went and got my GED.
Oh, good for you. Glad you went and got it for yourself. So outside of school, what'd you like about the meetings, or what was your experience at the Kingdom Hall? Was it something that you enjoyed it all? Was it torturous? What was it for you?
A little bit of both. I mean, I obviously liked the social aspect of it, as long as you were included. As far as like the teachings or the doctrine, I didn't really show much of an interest until I was more of a teenager. And so I basically just went, hey, it's Sunday, we have to go to the meeting. Crap. Okay. Up until, I was doing it all on my own.
Okay. And we'll get into that as we talk about that process a
Yeah.
little bit. What about, you talked about like people would come and pick you up for service or whatever. Did you enjoy the social aspect of that at least, or was there anything in it for you?
I honestly don't remember much about that, especially with being a young age. I know that the ones that picked me up, a lot of them were the older ones in the congregation in our area. They'd pick me up, pioneers, take me out, 4 or 5 hours, buy me lunch, that kind of stuff. So that part of it I liked.
I'm sure that was a fun little adventure. It's something to do. What about at home? What was your home life like? You've got, obviously, through the ages, it's changing and you're having more people in the home. But were you guys, did you feel like you were a pretty happy family? You got along, or what was the temperature of the room?
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, of course, we were kids, so we fought like crazy. But it was also one of those. It was an easy home life. Nothing abusive or weird about it or anything like that. It, we did normal kid stuff. We play video games or we play outside or whatever.
Were the things that you guys did as a family? Did you do like family vacations or game night
We
or
would take
something?
vacations. We would take vacations every now and then. When I did have the cancer, we did go to Disney World. The Make-A-Wish Foundation granted that one.
Awesome.
We took trips to Maine. We went to Texas to see family. I mean, we made it around a little bit.
Okay. It's nice to remember that. you know, Obviously, I know a little bit about how your story went, but uh, it's just nice to remember some of the good times. In that
Hmm.
we were raised in a cult, and the cult wasn't necessarily fun, and some of our families weren't fun. It sounds like yours
No.
maybe wasn't quite like some, but it sounds like you all had some good times in there, and that's awesome. It's nice to look
Hmm.
back on those times, isn't it?
Agreed.
So, as you started going into your teenage years, I don't really know when you got baptized. What was kind of your process of growing up in the truth, as they say?
I was baptized when I was 14. And as far as for why I got baptized, at the time, it was more just because, hey, these people are passing mics. These people are working the sound box. These people are working the stage. Hey, they're working back in literature. Why can't I? So I never understood that part of it until it got closer to me saying, hey, I'm just going to get baptized. And of course, it did. It was dominated by those two families, that clique. Those were the ones that had privileges and, the parts and all that fun stuff. And I wanted to be like that group. So that's what initially caused me to get baptized.
That makes a lot of sense. You want to fit in, right? And that's what people do to fit in.
Yep.
So so you get baptized. I don't know, was that getting baptized? Where'd you get baptized at, in Evansville?
No, actually, it's the Indianapolis Assembly Hall.
Oh, okay. Okay. So a small a
It was a
circuit
circuit
assembly or
assembly.
a special day.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay. And what was that process like for you?
Well, the process started where I went up to the secretary about a year before. I'm like, hey, I'm going to get baptized. And he's like, okay, we can do that. Is your dad studying with you? That kind of stuff. Well, no, Dad's not really studying with me, but I have gone through. I've read all the publications myself, and I know the doctrine, which is essentially what I told him, and that was true. As far as the family worship or anything like that, that wasn't as popular back then as it is now. So there wasn't any diehard. Guess what? Monday night we're going to sit down. We're going to read this and this and this. No. Every now and then he'd have us look at something, or we'd study for the Watchtower or something like that. But there wasn't really much other than that.
So, although you weren't studying a lot at home or whatever the case may be, did you how did it go when you had to sit down with the brothers, right? You get in a committee of 3 brothers and you see them at different times and have to answer the questions and everything. How'd you find that experience? Because it's kind of a unique thing for each person.
Yeah, for me it was easy. It didn't bug me. It was, simple questions and simple doctrine, that kind of stuff that you hear beat into your brain over and over again at the Kingdom Hall throughout the weeks. So that wasn't difficult for me at all.
So after you were approved and you got baptized, did you feel any different? How was it when you came up out of the water? Were there any doves? Did people talk to you in a different way? Because I know that is
Well,
kind of one of those moments, right, where people kind of offer some praise.
yeah. As far as people talking to me in a different way or anything like that, not really. Oh, I'm so proud of you, and that kind of stuff. Sure, but as far as being seen in a different way, not that I'm aware of.
Gotcha. Did it? Uh, was your family excited for you or anything? Did you
My
go out
family
to
was.
eat afterward or celebrate in any way?
I do not remember.
Okay, gotcha. Um,
I mean, of course they were happy for me, but as
right.
far as celebrating or anything like that, going out to eat or praise or anything, I don't remember.
Gotcha. I know some people, they'll have a party, or not a party, but like everybody will go
A
out
get together.
afterward. People give them gifts. What was that you said?
A get together.
Yeah, a get together. There you go. Yes, we call it a get together. And they'll get a Bible with their name on it, or
Hmm.
personalized or something like. I never got it.
Oh,
I
that was
never.
big back then. I forgot about that.
Yeah, that was a big deal. Yeah.
Personalized Bible, sometimes songbook leather bound,
Hmm.
having the reasoning book in the back of the Bible, getting the big reference Bible bound in leather. Man, I forgot all about that.
Yep. You fancy, huh? It's just, it's one of those things where you stand out how you can, and that was a
Hmm.
way to stand out, was to have some special bound book or the
Yes.
nice briefcase if you were a brother.
Hmm. Yeah, and it was a status thing.
Oh,
For an individual who had a custom Bible, oh man, they were living the high life. They were, they were popular in the congregation, all that fun stuff. So it was really a status symbol.
oh, absolutely. The bigger the briefcase. uh,
Mm-hmm.
so what did you do after baptism? Were you given any status symbols? Were you asked to, if you wanted to fit in and do some of those performative things like handling mics or whatever, were you given anything to do in the congregation, and did it make you feel any type of way?
The only thing I was ever given in the congregation at that age, anyway, in that congregation, was mics, handling the microphones. And of course, handling the microphones, that's a big status thing too. Oh
Mhm.
man, he's a good standing, he's a good brother, that kind of stuff. And that was one of the only things that I did growing up is microphones.
Understood. Did you all have a lot of brothers in that hall? Like, was there much work to go around?
There was not much work to go around. There were quite a few younger individuals growing up in my generation, and even ones who were adults at the time. That there was not enough to go around, but plenty of people to do it. But there were also a bunch of individuals in the congregation. Of course, there's plenty of brothers who didn't have any privileges. So it kind of evened itself out a little bit.
Okay. How'd you feel doing microphones and things like that? Did that make you feel more included?
Oh, it makes you feel important. Makes you feel important. Look at me. I get to do microphones. I'm better than you all. I mean, it really is. It's a status thing within a congregation.
Hmm. Yeah, it certainly is. There's a hierarchy for sure
Yes.
inside the brothers.
Yes.
So how did things play out for you? Did you pioneer anything after you had that baptized status?
Not for about 3 years. Um, in that time, I did go out in service and stuff, and I had to lead the field group out, service group out, and before and that kind of stuff as a teenager, and that was great. But other than that, not really.
So how did your life go after your baptism? And are there any moments that we've missed? Big things that happened in your life in there?
No, not really. As far as after the baptism, everything was pretty average for a witness, a young witness, or a brother in a hall. Microphones or tedious things that within the congregation that may need you to do, whether it be cleaning or whatever. There's always plenty of that to go around. For a little bit, the congregation that I was associated, their territory consists of 2 full counties, and for a little bit, they had thrown around the idea of starting another congregation in neighboring counties so that each congregation just had the one county to deal with. That, for a little bit, I don't remember exactly how long, but a building was rented in the town that I grew up in for it and used on Sundays. My dad actually was the one who carried around the sound system, everything in the back of an old van to set up for the place we were renting, and that lasted for a little bit.
Oh, weird. So at that point, your dad obviously was a witness.
Mm-hmm.
So how did he end up becoming part of it?
That, I mean, he's had a study with a brother in her congregation a couple years after my mom was indoctrinated into it. and progress like that.
Did he just was he just curious, what's this thing my wife is involved in, and maybe I'll join the kids at church, so to speak?
More
Or
than likely, but that I can't speak on.
okay, fair enough. So your dad was a part of it, and you all that's weird. So you all were renting some other building, kind of like as a mock trial to see if you all could create another
Pretty
congregation?
much. Pretty much.
Huh. That's interesting. Hauling around the sound system in the back of a van. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um,
It was a small building. I mean, maybe 25 people, something like that. So it wasn't huge. It wasn't a big ordeal or anything like that. It was even only one microphone that got passed around. Two really big speakers in the back, and that was it.
how'd you
And
feel
that was when
getting to be part of that?
well, I hadn't been baptized just yet when that had started. And so I wasn't able to handle a microphone or anything like that, because, of course, I'm not baptized, so you can't help. So my dad was the one that ran the sound. There was another brother, one or two brothers that would rotate passing the mic on a Sunday. I vividly remember one instance where Dad was the only brother there, and so I got to do the sound while he passed the mic. But other than that, it was nothing special.
Okay.
For sure.
That sounds like a really small group that was kind of broken off like that.
Mm-hmm.
Did you all have any members of the clique in the small group, or was it
No.
the others who were part of the small
No,
group?
that clique stayed in the congregation. They stayed in town. That's where all of them lived. They all lived in that one county, so there was no need for them to help or go anywhere or anything like that. As far as who was there, it was more just the old timers or, people here and there scattered throughout the county as they were trying to form a congregation in. So from a little bit of everywhere.
So you guys, so after you got baptized, you said it's pretty much just an average witness existence, I guess. As you were going toward, well, I guess 17 for you, which is where you graduated. Obviously, as people get toward a certain age, maybe they get a job at 16, or
Mm-hmm.
they're thinking about what they're going to do after they turn 18, whatever the case may be. What was your path?
Well, after I got baptized, and had been in the congregation as a baptized brother for a few years, the individual that studied with my dad had moved to another congregation in the area, and he ended up convincing Dad to bring us to that new congregation because there was need. And so that congregation is where I really started getting into it.
Okay. And so how old were you when you guys moved up there?
16.
Okay. And so when you moved up there, were you looking for a job or anything like that, or were you just like doubling down on the witness path, so to speak?
I was doubling down at that time, and not really focusing on what I'm going to do for work. I did eventually stop working for a brother in that congregation who owned a business, but I was more focused on the congregation side of it.
Okay. And what'd you start doing? What
Well,
was your path there as far as getting more heavily involved?
well, I was the youngest brother in that congregation. It was a congregation full of old timers, and so right off the bat, oh well, we need you to help pass the mics, or we need you to help with the sound or the stage, or something to that effect. And I did that for a while before anything else.
And how did it feel to be, I guess now you've left the clique behind. Now you're in a new environment. How did it feel there?
Well, you feel special. You feel like you're important because you go from a congregation where you're not doing anything to a congregation where you're doing all kinds of stuff, and it's night and day. It's a big difference.
Yeah, and as humans, we all have kind of that desire to be needed, and it makes you feel good that you're needed and you can help.
hmm
I totally understand. So, how did things go in the new congregation?
Oh, the new congregation, I progressed pretty quick. Within a year, I was a regular pioneer. I was a ministerial servant. I got thrown territories and literature, and I was the assistant overseer for a service group. There were quite a few things that were just thrown automatically. There weren't many qualified brothers in that congregation, with a lot of them being older, and so I think before me there was one ministerial servant and like maybe 7 elders, something like that, and so they were the ones that did everything.
I'm sure they were glad to see you come along. That's why they tossed you all of the different things, right? They needed somebody to
Yeah,
help because it sounds like, 7 elders and only 2 ministerial servants. I guess it wasn't a large congregation, but that's still
not
a lot
really.
of work that needs to be done.
Yeah, it is. And a lot of people, if you haven't been thrown into those responsibilities or those situations, you don't really realize what goes on behind the scenes. There's a lot of work that gets done, whether it be, doing a literature inventory, which was supposed to be done once a month, or, keeping track of all the territories. I had a spreadsheet set up for, the dates that they'd been checked out. And so I Microsoft and organize it in that way. Somebody comes to get a territory here. I need this one worked. I knew which ones were the oldest, and that helped. And at the time, I was a regular pioneer, so I was always out in service.
Yeah, you're right. That people don't realize a lot of times how much work is involved in that stuff. I remember doing literature territories, the magazines, the
Mm-hmm.
sound, all the stage, all those
Mm-hmm.
different things, and just that, and cutting the grass, and there's a lot of things that people are
Mm-hmm.
doing that people don't always realize. Uh,
Yeah.
just going to pick up the literature was a pain. Having to go
Yes.
somewhere to get it, it was not
Yes.
fun.
No. It all gets shipped to one central location in the territory, and all the congregations go and pick it up. And yeah, it was fun.
Yeah. And I don't know where that location was for you.
Well, for me, it was Bloomington,
Oh, that's a pretty
since
decent drive.
it was about a 2-hour drive for me from where we lived.
Yeah.
And of course, the Southern Circuit, which is where we're from, they picked up in Louisville, which is about a 50-minute drive from where I grew up. So there was a little bit of a difference there, but I didn't have to go and get the literature very often when I was going back and forth.
Yeah, that's just a lot of time and wear and tear on a car and everything. Again, people don't
hmm
realize. Um,
Yeah.
so you were participating in all of this. You said you were a ministerial servant. Did you give public talks or anything like that?
I have 2 public talk outlines. Still have them, actually. I did give it in congregations in the area, both of them, not it. So I have been back and forth traveling, and been on the receiving end of hospitality and all that fun stuff on Sundays. Which hospitality, for those who aren't familiar, if an individual gives a public discourse on a Sunday or sermon, there is a family or a group that is assigned to take them out for lunch after the meeting, or take them back to the house for a barbecue or whatever. In other words, providing their meal. And that was an every Sunday thing, and it would rotate. You could either sign up to do it or be assigned to do it, one or the other.
Yeah, it was fun to do. I enjoyed it. Because I got to meet a lot of people and take them out and buy them lunch or whatever. It was fun at times to do that, to meet other people from other places.
Yeah.
And I'm sure I never gave a public talk. The guy had stepped down from being a servant right before I had a public talk. And so I never got to be on the receiving end of the hospitality. But I'm sure that that could have been fun and interesting as well.
It had its moments.
Any that you remember that you enjoyed or that were awkward?
Specifically, no, nothing stood out. Thank God. But I do remember friends and talking and socializing. Sundays after the meeting, after I'd given the talk, or even if I hadn't, if I was the one that was offering hospitality, for instance, I remember doing that and just meeting new people, or catching up with old friends. Either way, because a lot of times your speakers, they travel throughout the circuit, and the circuit consists of multiple congregations. So there's, sometimes 6, 7 congregations in one circuit, and all of those congregations are sharing public speakers back and forth and just circulating. So you get around.
Yep. So what did you do? So you're a pioneer, you're a young ministerial servant. How old were you doing that? I mean, that what, like 18, 19? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Been there, done that, same age. It's interesting to be that age and have all of that to do. How did it? So, what did that translate into in your life? Were you getting out and socializing? Otherwise, What were your goals? What were you going to do?
My goal was to go to Bethel. That's what I wanted to do. After I started pioneering and went to pioneer school and all that fun stuff, that's when I really started to socialize with individuals in the surrounding circuit. I didn't really have really, really good friends until I was like 17 or 18, just because there was nobody really in the area. Had one best friend, 2, something like that. There were a couple people who I hung out with on a regular basis, but it was a very, very, very small group.
And what'd you guys like to go do?
Well, we're nerds. So, we would sit around and play video games, or, the Star Wars D6 was really popular back then, which is very similar to Dungeons & Dragons, but Star Wars. So that was really popular back then. So there was a group of us that would play that on a regular basis. Or, Smash Brothers tournaments. We would get around, we would do that. It was just kind of a variety of things. More so on the nerdy side, obviously.
I'm sure that was a lot of fun. It's nice I mean, there were, again, even in a cult, there are good times with other individuals when you can find somebody who shares something that you all can be authentic and enjoying. And not feel like you have to enjoy.
Correct.
That's nice. So where's your life take you from there? Would you like to see opportunities for people that have been victims of financial control? Really, like all of us that left a cult, that have been discouraged from education, ambition, and financial literacy. Would you like to see those individuals have resources available to get help? Wouldn't it be nice to see job opportunities available for ex-Jehovah's Witnesses who have been isolated from even knowing what those opportunities might be? Do you have a small business, but maybe you don't know how to market it or put it in front of the right people? Or maybe you have a hard time selling what you have or what you do because you've been told your whole life that you're not good enough. Are you struggling because you have no network to work within and so your opportunities are very limited? What if you had access to help you to actually manage the money you made so that you kept more of it and maybe had some chance at actually retiring with dignity someday? If these things sound good to you, I'm looking for people that are looking for such opportunities. I'm looking for people in the community that are recruiters, marketing professionals, employers, and those who want to be helped in these areas. And if you're not in the community and you listen to this and you're like, hey, I have a business and I think I could help in some way, feel free to reach out. Please go to exjwhelp.com, again, exjwhelp.com, or I'm calling this the Uprising Project. So you can also go to theuprisingproject.com for more information and to apply to be included in some exciting new opportunities that I'm working very hard to bring into the community. Together, we can all rise up.
Well, from there, I guess something else I should add
Mhm.
is previously, so we're talking like 1999, something like that. I ended up going to a summer camp for individuals who either had or have had cancer, and that lasted a week. And there were just activities, games, crafts that throughout the week for people to do. The goal was for people to get away, be real kids, not have to worry about the whole treatments or whatever the case may be there, and just have fun. I did that for a couple of years. But the first year that I went, I actually met somebody, got to talking to her, found out she was a witness. She was a witness from one state over. And so, we both connected that way, connected on an aspect that, number one, we're witnesses. Number two, we both had cancer. And we're really good friends after that. So, that there was that social group, her friend group. I met a bunch of her friends, and then another state over where I'm at, you've got a friend group that's slowly growing as I'm getting older. So it was interesting, to say the least.
And what was interesting about it? Just having the two friend groups, or did the two friend groups
Just the
ever
two
collide, so to speak? Did they ever?
two friend groups that never collide.
Okay.
Well, wait, I take that back. They did at the wedding to my first wife, but that's another story. They were essentially separate groups.
Okay. And so you enjoyed yourself there as far as
Yeah.
having kind of a wealth of friends a little bit for a time.
Yeah, and this is the time of AOL Instant Messenger and MSN Messenger and all that. So, it was dial-up internet and getting on and getting into the chat rooms and just talking with your friends. That was what happened a lot of the times.
Okay. So it sounds like you felt like you were fitting in. You were pioneering, a ministerial servant. You got all these friends, but you're here talking to me today. So clearly things changed over time.
Yes, they did.
Where did you start to go, or did something start to change
Well,
then, or did you continue on for a while?
I continued on for a while. I continued on for about another 10 years. And in that time, I met my first wife through the friend group from the summer camps that I went to from the other state. So that's where she came into play. And I had slowly started getting more and more friends in the local area from not only, number one, being able to drive and go places, but number two, from my face being out there, from being at, different congregations, or people knowing me from, I don't know, from a talk that I gave on a circuit assembly. I did Bible reading when they were still doing that. People knew me from that. People knew me from my history with the cancer. So that group was slowly starting to grow.
And you say, so you met your first wife there. So how old were you when you got married? The first time, I guess.
20.
20 years old. Okay. And how old
Yeah.
was she?
19.
19. Yeah. Okay. And
Huh?
so you guys got married. Did you get married um, in a Kingdom Hall, or at your hall, or hers, or somewhere
We
else?
did.
Or
We got married at the Kingdom Hall that I had moved to out of this area. The congregation that my family and I had switched to. We got married in that Kingdom Hall. Before I was able to get married, though, I was asked to step down as a ministerial servant and a regular pioneer because, you're young, new responsibilities, you need to focus on this and this and this, as opposed to this and this and this. So, like I was told, I stepped down, and I had no problem with that. And about 3 months later, we were married.
okay, so they asked you to step down from your congregational responsibilities. What? So you could
Yeah.
focus on your relationship?
Yes.
Hmm.
Which is sounds kind of weird, doesn't it?
It does
Because
sound.
that's not really very common within the witnesses for them to say, "Oh, put Jehovah on the side burner, focus on your relationship, and we'll take care of the duties of the congregation." You don't get that very often. Usually, it's like put your relationship on the side burner, put Jehovah first, and focus on the congregation and his congregation responsibilities. So it was a little bit of a flip flop on that one, which is odd.
That's very odd. I wonder what their reasoning was on that. Or
I
maybe
never
they just
got a
thought they were
reason.
doing you a favor and helping you in your relationship, and you could come back and
Probably.
take those responsibilities afterward.
Yeah, probably so. I mean, I wasn't in trouble or anything like that. It was just, well, you're getting married. You're going to be newly married. You need to focus on that. So
Okay.
before the brother would even agree to do the wedding ceremony, he wanted me to do that.
All right. So I'm a little puzzled by that. It's just
Yeah,
maybe any who are listening or watching this on YouTube, drop in the comments. Maybe there are other people out there who were encouraged to step down from things as well. That's interesting. So you
yeah,
guys ended up getting married, and
yeah.
how'd life go?
Well, for the first little bit, it went good. She had an apartment in the Georgetown, Kentucky area, and that's where I ended up moving. I switched to that congregation, and we were there for maybe about 6 months. And I'm like, I gotta go. I want to go back to Indiana because there was just that's where my friend group was. All that she didn't really care. She didn't have much of a friend group in that there anyway. So about 6 months after we got married, I ended up moving back to my home area, getting an apartment.
Okay. You said I ended up moving. Did she move with
Well,
you? Okay. All right.
we ended up moving.
Okay. So you guys then moved back to Indiana.
Hmm.
Uh and how did she integrate into a new group of people?
She was fine. She was, my friend group had been established, a couple of years before I even met her, and they automatically just accepted her into the group. And she was included in everything. And so it was a little bit of a different life for her because growing up, she didn't have much as far as friends go. Didn't have many. And so that, for her, that took some getting used to.
And how did life go in southern Indiana with your new wife and your friends and everything? How did it progress, or how did it change and evolve over time?
Well, when we moved to Indiana, I ended up going to a congregation where my best friend was. So, completely new congregation, and was active in that congregation. And we were there for, I want to say 3 years, something like that. And that's the one I ended up getting divorced in.
Okay. So, was there anything poignant in the dissolution of that? Was that part of your path out, or of the witnesses
It was a
entirely?
big part of my path out. It was a
Okay.
huge part of my path out. Because it was handled completely wrong. It was ridiculous the way they did it. Of course, this goes into play with the two witness rule, or a confession, or a statement of saying I'm guilty, whatever the case may be. She ended up cheating on me. She used the guise of a business trip and flew to meet one of the guys she met online, and was there for a week. And it was in that week is when I figured it out, and things just went way downhill from there. And it was just, I got the congregation involved because that's the right thing to do. Call the elders, get them involved. And of course, she never confessed to anything, never wrote anything, nothing. No matter what kind of evidence I had, no, wasn't good enough. So I was in a pickle. It didn't really know what to do. And after dealing with that for a couple months, I finally made the decision to divorce her because I wasn't going to deal with it. There was no point in dealing with her lying, her cheating, with, how things were going at home because of that. No, done.
And it's so interesting to think, when you're not one of Jehovah's Witnesses and your spouse goes off on a business trip and I guess stays with some guy for a week or whatever, and you think something's going on or whatever, you can make your own decisions instantly as to how you want to handle that. But when you're one of
Exactly.
Jehovah's Witnesses, you have to take that before the elders, because if you do this wrong, you could have a divorce that could get you in trouble or prevent you from ever being able to remarry, because if there's no
We'll get
proof.
into that one too.
Okay. Okay. So how did that play out for you? Because you said you did eventually decide to divorce.
I did. It was one of the things at the time that I was really dealing with it. I had responsibilities and stuff in the hall. I was passing mics and stuff like that, but I just couldn't do it. Didn't want to do it. I'd have the guy, "Oh, your son to pass the mics today." I'm not. No, I don't feel like doing that today. I'm not. And he's like, "Well, you have to. It's your responsibility. You're on the schedule to do it." So I'm like, "Okay, watch this." Went up to one of the local elders. I'm like, "I want no responsibility. I want no privileges. I'm done." And just sat down. And never had any form of responsibility after that. The rest of my career. Another 7 years.
Okay. So for 7 years. All right. So, and where does the divorce play into all of that as well?
The divorce plays in when I am 23. Now, previously, we had, met with some old friends or some old people that we knew. In fact, a brother and his wife from that clique in the congregation I grew up in. We would go over to their house. He had just recently been appointed an elder, and dummy him, he had the Shepherd the Flock book left out on the table, and I knew nothing about that book. Obviously, I'm just a rank and file witness. I didn't know that there was a separate elder's manual that was for their eyes only, and I just look at it. I'm like, what is that? So I reach over and I open the book, and he's like, oh, you can't see that. Okay, that's weird. What is it? He's like, that's secret. Okay. And so kind of just kept that in the back of my mind. Didn't really look into anything much after that. But then around the time of when I filed for divorce and all that, of course, they say you're not scripturally free to remarry because there's not two witnesses and there's no confession. She stuck by her guns. She was a regular pioneer for a little bit. She was removed as a regular pioneer, but they stuck to their guns. You're not scripturally free to remarry until we have evidence otherwise. And that was just like one heck of a blow, because here I have a wife who's unfaithful, who isn't coming to meetings anymore. I'm still coming to meetings. I'm still an active witness. And yet you're treating me like this. You're treating me like I'm the scum of the earth for divorcing her when she's the one who did it, and she's the one who's showing by her actions that she's guilty. But, that never went over well with him. During her judicial, I emailed screenshots and messages and all kinds of stuff, because once I had started to get really suspicious of things, I installed a key tracker on my laptop because I wanted to know what she was doing. And of course, me being a nerd, that's easy. She didn't know. She had no way of knowing that it was installed. So, she's typing along, and I'm getting usernames, and I'm getting passwords, and I'm getting all kinds of stuff. And I'm like, all right, watch this. So I'm logging into all of her stuff. I'm fetching information. I'm taking screenshots off my laptop. I'm compiling all of this into an email to send to the 3 elders who were on her judicial committee. And no, it wasn't good enough. There's no evidence. This isn't good enough. Okay. One of the elders who was on the judicial committee, of course, was trying to reach out to her and stuff. He sent emails, which dumb on his end, because he, in one of his emails, he's like, we know that Jacob has been a horrible husband to you. We are just trying to reach out and help. And I saw that, and I was fuming. And not only did I send an email to all 3 of the brothers on that judicial committee, I printed it out, and I took it into the Kingdom Hall, and I pulled him into the back room. I'm like, what the hell? How can you accuse me of being a horrible husband when I'm doing everything in my power to fix this? I'm the one who came to you guys. I'm the one who continues to come to the meetings. I'm the one who is working with you guys, not her. Oh, well, we're just trying to get her to soften up and talk a little bit. Not with slander.
Oh, they're playing good cop, bad cop.
Yes, they were playing good cop,
Or at
bad
least
cop.
that's what they said.
Theoretically. And after that, that's when I really started to, and, you know, in the back of my head, I still remember the Shepherd of the Flock of God book. And, you know, every now and then I'd do just a Google search just because I was always curious. Just do a brief Google search to see what will come up. And I found the PDF. And I started digging through it. And I'm like, oh my God. there was just so much in it. But specifically, I was more worried about the clause for remarriage. And there is an entire chapter with 3 or 4 paragraphs on scriptural freedom to remarry and what justifies rejection and what justifies you know, being free. And there's also a clause at the end, and it says, to the effect of an individual can write a letter to the body of elders and personally take responsibility before Jehovah for the decision to be scripturally free to remarry or not. And so I jump on it. And the congregation that I'm in, this is roughly 6 months-ish after the divorce. The congregation I'm in, I switched completely to a congregation where I had another set of friends out of the circuit, you know, kind of starting fresh. And the elder, there was one elder in the congregation, and he was a substitute CO. Just one elder at the time. The special pioneer got moved in, and I went to them, and I wrote a letter. And they just look at me. They're like, what's this? I said, this is me taking responsibility before Jehovah for my spiritual freedom. I said, I'm ready to start looking again. I'm ready to start helping in the congregation again because, well, you can't scripturally remarry, so you're not considered exemplary because you're divorced. So that wiped out any possibility of ever having responsibility again until that was fixed, unless there was adultery involved or confession, something. And that turned into a long, drawn-out debate over time, whether I qualified to use this or not, or is this applicable in his situation? And it was decided no, it wasn't applicable in my situation at all. So for the next, I want to say 4 years, for the next 4 years, I remained in the organization. I would go out in service with my friends. I would go to get-togethers. Didn't have any responsibility in the hall, but I was still around, and I was still looked upon fondly, as opposed to, oh my God, he doesn't have privileges. What's wrong with him? It wasn't ever like that for me. During that time, and seeing stuff going on in the congregation, and the way things were unfolding just everywhere, especially after knowing about the Shepherd of the Flock of God book, I started putting two and two together. And I started to do research. And I started finding YouTube channels. Yours was one of them. I found your channel. Lloyd Evans was another one. The Critical Thought with Lady C and JT. I mean, there are multiple channels and podcasts that I found that just made sense completely. And so over the next little bit, that's what I dived into. I dived into watching the videos, looking at the evidence, and it just all entangled from there completely.
And as you started to find that evidence, how did that affect? What was the experience of starting to find that evidence while still attending meetings like?
It didn't bug me
Okay.
because at the time I was just reading, I was just finding stuff. So it didn't bug me necessarily. I was still fine with it. I just wanted people to see what I was reading and understand what I was saying, because you can't tell me this doesn't apply to me when this and this and this says otherwise. Or, well, what about this? Or, there were just questions that popped up. And at the time, my family had already left. They had stopped going to the meetings completely. Never dissociated or disfellowship, nothing like that. And so I was the only one in the family who was a witness. And so I had my, my friend's family, my adopted family. I was always over at her house. We were always doing, always going to the movies, always doing something at the house, always having a cookout, always a bonfire, going hiking. And so that's where my friend group started to stay, and didn't really expand anymore for years. And when I finally got to the point of waking up, not questioning it anymore, just being done with it, that friend group is all I had. I had even gone to the elders in the congregation I was in, and I'm like, my family's doing this and this and this. Why are they not disfellowshipped? Or, this was around the time that the brochure, come back, draw close to Jehovah, or come back to the flock, or return to Jehovah. There it is. Yep. It's about the same time that came out. And, me, I just got home from the convention. Hey, look at this brochure. Flap, right on the table where, my entire family could see it. Essentially saying, come back. Why not? But it was, it was interesting for sure.
So I take it that the Return to Jehovah brochure did not land like you thought?
Nope, not at all. It was ignored. Smart for them on their end.
And so you obviously care about, we were all taught to care about truth, being Jehovah's Witnesses, or at least those were the words that were stated, even though we know how they manipulate and twist truth. So you're on this path of searching for truth now. You're reading the Shepherd, the Flock of God book, the Elder's Manual. You're online, you're looking things up, you're listening to channels like Mod and others. What is it that helps you to put it all together to where, like, you just encourage them to return to Jehovah while you're doing things that are kind of leading you away from Jehovah, so to speak, or from the congregation? So what was your path like?
Well, when you grow up indoctrinated, it's black and white. This is right, this is wrong, period. But once you start looking underneath the hood a little bit, doing some research, things aren't as black and white. There's a lot of gray, and there's a lot of stuff that's not even mentioned. So thinking about that and seeing how some other families were being treated, other things that were going on with our congregation, favoritism, whatever. That just, it just so slowly, I was slowly on my way out.
What would you say? Maybe this is unfair to ask you to quantify this, but
Go ahead.
which was bigger in your awakening process? Was it the new things that you were learning, or was it just observing the behavior and culture of Jehovah's Witnesses?
It was about 50-50.
Okay.
Because what really the big thing was for me was how I was treated in the congregation because of my status. That was the biggest thing for me because it wasn't fair. It wasn't right. As far as doctrine, I didn't care. Whatever. This was about the time that they came out with the overlapping generations teaching and changing things up. And at the time, I'm like, that doesn't really make sense, but okay, cool. Blinders were about halfway off.
So it sounds like, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, you were finding out this new information and everything, but it doesn't sound like you were super enthralled with the doctrine anyway. It sounds like for you, being one of Jehovah's Witnesses was more just about the community, and it's the thing you do, it's the purpose that you felt you had. And when that thing kind of wasn't so
To an
great
extent,
anymore, what'd you have to stay
to an
for?
extent, it was, I believed it wholeheartedly,
Okay.
100%. It was the truth. This is how things happened. This is fact. That was the mindset. As with most Jehovah's Witnesses, that's the mindset.
Mhm.
And nothing's going to tell you otherwise. So when I was dealing with the way I was treated within the congregation, friends, whatever the case, that's what kind of nudged me. That's what kind of made me stop and think a little bit. Even though growing up, I had been that same person. I've been the one that, one of my best friends had been disfellowshipped. Well, can't talk to him anymore. See you. Or, I don't know, anything like that. But to really think about it and experience it is different.
Yeah.
Especially when you put two and two together.
Yeah, it's how you were feeling about the experience and what was happening to you, what you were seeing around you seemed to be the thing that overcame how you felt about any of the rest of it. Um, Interesting that you swallowed the overlapping generations. It's just funny because that's what we all do. We all just in that you've already got the presumption of it's the truth, so therefore whatever change is made, all right, I'll swallow that one too. Okay, whatever, and you move on.
Yeah. Now, asking me to explain it, no, couldn't explain that. I barely even was able to explain the 1914 doctrine. Period. I could, but it took a little bit. So it was just, to me, it was something else that, well, I'm not going to use that. So there we go. I'm never going to have to explain it. It's not like I'm giving public talk anymore, or I'm not instructing the congregation. So I don't need to know it.
So then what was the straw that broke the camel's back for you? What was the thing that caused this to come crashing down? Because it sounds like there's kind of death by 1,000 cuts a little bit going on here.
Yeah.
But was there anything that caused the actual dissolution of it all?
I had really just been fed up with it. Fed up with, oh no, I'll tell you exactly what it was. So I forgot about this. So I had moved back to the congregation that I had grown up in. I'd been there for about a year, been back, and still dealing with the scriptural freedom to remarry. And I had got invited to go to the attendant meeting for the district convention that was in Evansville. And got the email. It was all official. Went to the meeting, got my assignment, and was ready for the convention. Convention day comes. I carpool with some friends from the congregation, brothers that, we were all attendants. I walk into the convention center. I go up to the desk to get my name tag and my assignment. And the attendant overseer, just staying right there in the middle of the lobby, yelled my name. And so I walk over to him. And he's like, we just got in contact, or your service committee just got in contact with us, and they changed their mind. They said you're not qualified to serve as an attendant. And I said, really? I said, yeah. So we're going to have to ask you to go outside because the doors hadn't opened yet, and it was attendance only. And I had just had it. I was done. And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, I'm effing done. I'm not doing this anymore. So I walk out the door. I see 2 of the 3 elders who were part of the service committee of our congregation, and I just give them both the big old finger. And I'm like, I'm done. Now, what sucked is, of course, me and you, we live in the same area. So you know how far Evansville is.
Mhm.
Evansville can be, there you go, about a 2-hour drive. And I had carpooled. So I had no way of leaving or getting home or anything like that. So it was a Friday morning, and I get on the phone, I call my dad, I'm like, I need you to come to Evansville. I said, it's a big deal. I said, I need picked up, and I need taken back to my car. And that was the last time that I ever stepped into a cult rented building or owned building or on the property. Never again. I was completely done after that. I was also in college at the time. I had decided to go back to college, back to school. And I'd been in college for almost a year at this point. And I was in college for psychology. And everything was just starting to fall into place, starting to finally click, starting to make sense. In fact, while I was in college, I was in an advanced English class, and we had an assignment to write a research paper. Well, I knew what I was going to write about. My research paper title was Jehovah's Witnesses, Religious Cult. And it broke down bit by bit Stephen Hassan's bite model. Broke it down and applied it to Jehovah's Witnesses. This thing was like 14 or 15 pages long. Now, what was interesting about it is that 85 to 90% of the references were all to Watchtower publications. And in fact, I'll send you a link. I've posted it on Reddit because so many people had wanted to read it over the years.
Yeah, send me a link. I'll put it in the description so anybody can read it.
Yeah, I'll definitely send you that link. And so after I did that, I was messing around with a girl in college and, that stuff that no-nos for witnesses, for sure. And I was just done. I just cold turkeyed it. After that, no, never again. I saw it for what it was, and I was done.
Did you just walk away? Did you disassociate? Did you get disfellowships?
Originally, I just walked away, and I was going to leave it. But I kept getting bugged And I was sick of it. I'm like, watch this. So I write this extensive dissociation letter. And I'm like, I'm done. And I sent the all three of those elders on the Secret Service Committee the same text. I said, I'm done. My letter is in the mail. Don't contact me again. If I find out that an announcement was been made, then there will be consequences, or legal consequences for those actions for slander. Because that's what it is. Yeah, it's selling congregation. Yeah, you no longer Jehovah's Witnesses, but when that announcement is made, what do people automatically assume?
Oh.
They automatically assume either you did something really, really bad.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, what an adulterous person, or spoke out against the governing body, and that automatically labels you as somebody who stay away. Never talk to him again. That which is, of course, shunned, where the shunning comes in, and the whole dynamics of a cult like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I was done. Now, at the time of sending that letter, I had already moved in with my fiance at the time. I lived in a new area, not in their circuit anymore. They had no idea how to get a hold of me other than my cell phone. And I was done with the witness life. I was done being in that environment. All my family had already left. I didn't really have any friends who wanted to hang out anymore because they were Uber witnesses. So I was on my own. And I was done. So cold turkey.
Ultimately, you ended up shunned by all those individuals.
Exactly. Now I've reached out to them here and there just because I've got a friend who still talks to me every now and then from our big friend group. He will keep me updated. He'll tell me, well, so and so had gotten cancer, and now so and so they're better. So he kind of keeps me in the loop. Mm-hmm. But other than that, completely shunned.
So then it almost sounds like with this friend, it's almost like necessary family business when it's your Jehovah's Witness family. They'll tell you when somebody got sick or something like that, but they don't really hang out anymore or have any normal relationships.
He's met my fiance once.
Oh, really?
We ended up meeting in Evansville and getting food and meeting and catching up. But I think I've seen him once in, how long has it been? 26 years? I've been out for 6 years. Now, actually, the anniversary for the 6-year anniversary will be coming up here in July.
Oh, well, happy early anniversary. Happy freedom, July. It's Independence Day,
yes.
So to speak, right?
There you go.
Taking your life back and saying, I don't want to play by these rules or do this thing. So good for you. And now, have you had any new discoveries, since leaving that?
Since leaving, I was diagnosed with autism.
Mm-hmm.
The last year that I was a witness, I had epilepsy. I had my first seizure while I was at the district convention of Evansville. That was great. And so medically things, of course, have just continued to change, but I'm still the same person. I mean, I've tried to reach out to a few people just because. One of them, she was my best friend for 10 years, decade, and just cold turkey. Nope. I've reached out to her. I've reached out to a couple of other people, just saying, hey, I haven't changed. I might not believe the same thing you do anymore, but I'm still the same person.
You're still Jacob.
Exactly. It has nothing to do with, even even taking religion out of it, I'm still the same person.
Did you maintain a relationship at all with the girl that you met at the cancer camp?
No, she cut me off too.
Oh,
She,
okay.
yeah,
That's sad.
I, I sent her, I actually sent her an email about a month ago. Just, hey, how are you? You know, this and this and this is going on. We should catch up. And, you know, in case you don't have my cell phone number anymore, here it is where you can email. I did that with her and 2 other people. But since, I mean, I've got my brother-in-law, I've been best friends with him for about 20 years now. And he left. So he's out, not raising my nephews as a witness, nothing like that. I've got another friend who was in a neighboring hall. He was in the Spanish. He's out. And I've got 2 more friends who were in another congregation with me who are also out now.
Nice.
So I've got a small friend group of ex-JWs slowly building up. It's always interesting to talk to other witnesses or other ex-witnesses and compare stories and compare notes.
Well, yeah, it's lovely and important to have friends who are not ex-JWs because there's a world of experience and diversity out there to tap into and to be a part of, and we can be a part of that diversity as well. But there is something that we've gone through that the average person that you talk to just can't really grasp.
Well, it's a unique experience. You're right.
It's a unique experience. They've not been there. They can't really grasp the depths of it. So it's nice to have other people who can, and it's easy
who can
to
relate.
talk with other people.
Like my fiance, she's good and all, but she can't relate. She wasn't raised in a cult,
right?
So you know, it's kind of hard.
So when you find other ex-JWs, you don't have to explain it all. You can just talk about it, which is nice without having to feel like you're having to witness to somebody almost to then unwitness to them.
Yeah, you know, and actually, we were friends. Hey, did you hear that Tony Morris was caught buying a whole bunch of alcohol? Well, you know, your average person isn't going to know who Tony Morris is or who the governing body is or, you know, anything like that. So having to explain all that for them to understand why it's so hilarious, it just kills it.
Understood. So I know one of the big, you touched on it a second ago, one of the big revelations for you or things that you learned about yourself is that that you have autism or you're on the spectrum. So when you look back at as you've learned about that, can you look back at your witness life? Do you see ways that maybe that impacted your experience or can you elaborate on that at all? Because I'm sure there's other people out there who have had similar experiences, but people don't talk about it.
It makes you understand why you didn't fit in, why I didn't fit in with this certain clique, or why I didn't understand that, or why don't they like me? That's weird. You know, it makes you see things. You know, I understand the black and white. I like rules. I like procedures. I like policies, all that fun stuff. So looking at it now, why weren't you following that rule? Why isn't this policy in place? Why are you allowing this to happen, but not this? Or why is this person doing this when he's clearly doing this? So it puts it all into a larger perspective, for sure.
Well, yeah, I would say that Jehovah's Witnesses are a very black and white organization. Now, you and I know, and you've already expressed how they don't uphold all of their rules and regulations. They go against their own rules and regulations at times, but you could see how autism might really vibe with that black and white mentality of Jehovah's
Yeah.
Witnesses for a
Which
time.
I could understand, like, looking back and wanting to go to Bethel, that kind of stuff, the structure,
Yeah.
that makes sense to me. My mom always said I would thrive in a place like that before we even knew about the whole autism thing. She said that would be good for you to have order, structure, routine, and that I always wanted to. Same with meetings. Well, you have this part first, this part first, this part first. This is supposed to be set up like this and structured like this, and so forth. So when it came to policy or procedure, even when I was non-exemplary, people would still ask me questions. Come to me, well, why is this and this like this? Oh, well, because this, this, this. They used me a lot for my understanding on things, but at the same time, I wasn't exemplary. So it was kind of
No. Again, you weren't exemplary by
their
their
standards.
system, their structure. And it's interesting that one of the very things that might have attracted you to some of it in the black and white nature of it and the rules and regulations was also the very thing that led you to realizing, oh yeah, this is all crap.
Mm-hmm.
Because you started to
Exactly.
see that the structure, the logic didn't add up. That in the formulaic manner in which everything is written, the answer at the end of that equal sign was not correct. It was an incorrect equation all along.
Yeah, it was.
Well, I'm glad that ultimately um, sometimes not fitting in hurts, but when you realize what this thing is, it's okay to not fit in. When you realize how damaging it is to people, it's nice to realize that maybe it's not me, it's them. And you
Mm-hmm.
start realizing, oh, they're the ones that are the problem, not me. They labeled me the problem
Mm-hmm.
my whole life. It's not me.
Yeah, that's true.
It's the system I was raised in. So I'm glad that you're out. You kind of touched on it a little bit. Is there anything that you would say to the people who shun you today? I mean, you already said, "Hey, I'm the same Jacob." Maybe that's it. But
Well, I mean, I understand where they're coming from. I understand why they are doing it. However, at the same time, they aren't looking at why they're doing it. They're just doing it because they're told to do it. So my encouragement for them or anybody, do your research. Don't just rely on one source of information. Don't just rely on the Watchtower Library, for instance. I mean, just a couple years ago, they came out with the Watchtower asking if they were a cult. And they went in and explained why they weren't a cult. Well, guess what? They are. And that's what a lot of cults will do, is they'll try and explain it off and make them look better to where, oh, we're just your average organization. We love God and whatever. But definitely do your research. Ask questions. Don't just go with, well, we'll find out soon. Jehovah will show us the way, or the governing body will let us know, or we have to wait for Jehovah to take care of things, or we have to wait for the new system. No. Do your research. Read. There's nothing wrong with reading. Knowledge, yeah, people say knowledge is power, but you know what? Essentially it is. Knowledge can be power because it opens up your mind. It helps you to see things in a different perspective. It helps you to understand your surroundings better. So there's nothing wrong with learning at all.
yeah,
People are just afraid to.
Sure. I don't think I've seen a cult yet that goes
Mm.
out there and tells everybody it's a cult, right? Like,
No. In
if that's
fact,
the
with my
case, there are no
autism,
cults because no cults are going to
exactly.
claim it.
Exactly. And with my autism, I'm kind of hyper focused on cults. Of course, Jehovah's Witnesses being the main one. I still keep up with all their changes and, elders' letters or revisements to the Shepherd's Flock book or whatever. I know all that like in the back of my hand. Mormons, Scientology, any cult like that. Fascinating. Learn anything I can about them. I was never a Mormon. Didn't know any Mormons. I'll watch the Mormon podcast channel on YouTube
Oh yeah.
and compare the stories. Same with Scientology. Leah Remini's special that came out, Scientology and its aftermath. That was really eye-opening because watching it and seeing all the similarities between Scientologists, Jehovah's Witnesses, and then Mormons, and seeing how it all fits together and how it all relates. So from that standpoint, I understand it. I really do. A lot better than most people, and better than most people think.
So that
They
being
underestimate it.
something, you mentioned having interests, cults being one of them. What so now you're not in a cult. What do you like about your life today? What are your other interests? What are things that you're into that you enjoy about life? What's good after leaving Watchtower?
Well, I'm on disability due to the epilepsy and autism, so I'm home quite a bit. Every now and then I've worked here and there when I'm physically able to. So I've got a lot of free time. I read a lot. I'm on YouTube constantly. I'm always on my Switch. I'm a walking Star Wars encyclopedia. I mean, there's quite a few different things that keep me busy.
Yeah. You say you've got a fiance today?
I do. I do. We've been engaged for 4 years, something like that.
Hmm.
I don't know. Haven't set a date, nothing like that. But yeah, and she helps a lot. She helps with the social aspect of it. She helps me try to understand that. She doesn't understand my obsession with the cults, or she doesn't understand why I like watching so many videos or reading so much about Jehovah's Witnesses. She doesn't get that, which I understand because if you weren't raised in the environment, if you aren't familiar with the environment, and if you haven't been through what a lot of us have been, it doesn't interest you.
Well,
It's
sure.
just another group, another religion. So I like that fact that since I have such an in-depth understanding of all of it, I've been able to help a couple of my friends to completely wake up and leave the organization and live their life. So that's been a plus. And I hope to continue to do that. I like the idea of activism. I really do.
Hmm.
Because, without that, I mean, that you're not going to make anybody aware of what's going on. They're going to see, oh, Jehovah's Witnesses, those are the ones that annoy you on Saturday by knocking on your door or stand by a car. They don't know the inner workings. They don't know how abusive the organization is. They don't know the trauma that it puts people through or that it causes. So there's a big need for activism. And I've always admired you or anybody else who is, big into it. I'd love to start a YouTube channel. I'd love to start a podcast. Do I have the means to do it? Not really. Am I going to? Probably not. But there again, you never know.
Well,
With
maybe you don't start your own thing. Maybe you help somebody else with theirs. Maybe
Mhm.
maybe you are supportive in some way. There's lots of ways to get involved that
Oh yeah,
don't mean being the talking head or whatever. And I
yeah,
mean, like, you're talking and sharing your story today. That's
mhm,
activism. And
mhm.
you give me that link to your research paper, and we'll share that as well. That additionally is activism. So there's many ways to get involved,
Oh
and
yeah. Oh
everybody
yeah.
can do it at their own pace or whatever their skills are.
Yes,
That's the
I
cool thing
agree.
about it, is there's a place to you get in where you fit in.
Hmm.
And you get to find
I
that out, and
mean,
it'll change over time.
even being on the backside of things, I like doing the research. I like answering the hard questions. Okay, fine. Here's the article. Here's the reference. Here's this. Here's this. There you go. Go present it. I'm fine with that too.
Yep.
Any ways that can be of assistance to the ex-JW community.
Well, I know, I appreciate you coming on today and sharing, and I know other people will as well. And yeah, I just thank you very much for sharing your story and being willing to talk openly about some of your own challenges in the situation that was being raised as one of Jehovah's Witnesses. And I think we all wish you well.
Well, thanks for having me. I've really enjoyed it.